Welcome to the all-new season of the Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery podcast. I'm Jeff Jones. This season, I'll be sharing honest conversations, practical insights, and meaningful discussions with amazing guests in the addiction, recovery, and family support field. We'll talk about the realities families face when addiction becomes part of their story. The fear, the strain on relationships, the uncertainty, the hope, and the small shifts that can begin to change how a family responds. As you listen along, I hope each episode gives you something to reflect on, something useful to take with you, and a little more support for the road ahead. Okay, so welcome to this episode of Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery. Today, I am very excited to have a conversation with Mr. Chris Scott. He has Fit Recovery, fitrecovery.org. I've known about Chris for a while, and this is my first conversation. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's fitrecovery.com, but that's just as well. I just want to make sure people don't go to a not found link and think we're not still out there. But it's great to be here with you, and I'm really looking forward to this.
All right. So how about if you start with just a concise explanation of who you are and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I started something called Fit Recovery, fitrecovery.com, back in 2014 after my decade-long battle with alcohol addiction. And I ended up going through all of the phases, or this, even the so-called types. We're told that there are 7 different types of so-called alcoholics. I was every single one, depending on which year. Some years I don't even remember towards the end. But, I went from, people say, why did you drink? Why did they pathologize the drinking, which in some cases makes sense. But in my case, it's like, why did I drink? I drank because I went to college. I think, a lot of people drink because they go to college. And I wasn't trying to solve some childhood trauma that I was aware of. Now, did I have trauma? Probably. I think everyone does. I was hearing impaired as a child. That's another thing I'll briefly get back to. But I just started drinking and I found it hard to stop and
Yeah.
had no idea why. And I ended up after, long story short, I had a career in finance, in high finance in Manhattan, moved to Atlanta. I did the moving thing that people often do, like, oh, well, if I move across the country, maybe the problem will go away. They don't realize it's themselves. It's not the location. Maybe they do a little better with the change of scenery, but it tends to catch up with them. And I really hit rock bottom when I was in Atlanta. I got to that point of severe chemical dependency. When I tried to quit, I would have hallucinations, auditory and eventually visual. I don't know if I had a seizure or not because it was so blurry during that time, but I just threw in the towel. And one day I woke up and I realized I needed to swallow my pride and tell my parents and tell my best friends. I was really lucky. I had not burned my bridges. I was not a mean drunk, luckily.
Yeah.
I was a happy drunk, but a stupid one and an unproductive one increasingly. And it got to the point where I couldn't drive my car in the morning to work because my hands were shaking. And I said, this is
Yeah.
it. Like, I'm not gonna, I had tried a few times, mix vodka in my vitamin water and drive to work so I could get there. But then, it's like I'm sneaking out to the Whole Foods across the street at lunch so that I can get one of those high ABV beers with the monk on it, like the 12% beer. It's like a liter, chug it in the bathroom stall so that I could get some relaxation to go back and finish my spreadsheets. But then 3 hours later, the like ding, 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 alarm bells are ringing again. It's time to drink or else we're going to have a freak out.
Yeah.
No way to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
I medically detoxed. And I found after, oh man, I think it was 2 or 3 months, again, a very blurry part of my life of inpatient rehab, that I needed something beyond what was typically given. And I really needed the nutritional component. And for
Yeah.
me,
How did you figure that out, Chris? Like,
mhm,
I think that is important. I want to underline, I needed something more than what traditional rehab was giving me. How did you figure that out, and how did you find the bio-nutritional approach?
I stumbled into it. And believe it or not, we were encouraged to laugh at the silly people that think you can cure alcoholism with vitamins. That was verbatim what one of our counselors said. It was like, some people think you can cure this disease with vitamins. And we're like, ha ha ha, how absurd. But what happened was I ended up wanting to get back into shape. We did, to their credit, have vans that would bring us to go to work out like a few times a week.
Yeah.
And I went to GNC, which they had actually cautioned us against. They said we would get cross-addicted to protein powder, which I've never heard of anyone doing that. But, I guess exercise, image, addiction, social media addiction with the fitness thing can be a thing. But anyway, I think exercise is great. I felt better after my workouts, and I found that when I bought some particular compounds, notably L-glutamine, which is a
Uh-huh.
precursor for GABA, and I didn't buy it for that. I had no idea what GABA was. Which I think is another failing of or oversight of the traditional programs. That how do I spend 2 or 3 months in there and I don't know what GABA is, right? And that's the main neurotransmitter involved in at least withdrawal, and very much involved in alcohol addiction, since ethanol is like kind of an analog for GABA in a way, among other things. But when I started taking the glutamine, and also, what else did I get? I got some like alpha lipoic acid and just a strong like B vitamins, multivitamin. I got something called ZMA, which was zinc and magnesium. And that was,
Uh-huh.
I thought, for my muscles to relax after my workout. I didn't put it together that this was for my brain to recover from addiction. I thought it was for my body to sort of resurrect itself from the pathetic state it had gotten itself in.
Yeah.
Over time,
Yeah.
I stumbled upon Joan Matthews Larson, Charles Gant, Abram Hoffer,
Right.
Dr. Kenneth Green.
Yeah. So Joan Matthew Larson, I have a very tender place in my heart for her. She has been at the core of a program I have, and I just have learned so much from her books, really. 7 Weeks to Sobriety, and what is the other one? It's about depression, getting past depression naturally, something like that. But yeah, so I went to your website before this interview and I found this video of you, like a little bit under an hour, and you have like a presentation, a slide presentation, and I was very impressed with that. So I
Thank you.
really like that. One thing one thing that I want to say to families who may be listening to this, and one of the things that I try to educate families about, is families can use a bio-nutritional repair. They can use amino acids to manage their own symptoms from living with addiction. And when they learn that, that can be a new perspective they can share with a loved one still in active addiction. And actually, going to Chris's website, fitrecovery.com, looking at that video, I'm so impressed with the amount of information that you put out there. That was awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for that contribution.
Thank you. I had actually, I think that video, I think we embedded it on fitrecovery.com from YouTube, and it has a few hundred thousand views now, which is crazy to me because we had maybe 30 people in the room. I was invited. This was back in 2020. I think it was maybe right before COVID
Yeah,
when I gave a little speech for like 30 people. It was a retreat for some like recovery podcasters. And everyone had different modalities. We had someone there who was into like something called brain spotting. We had other people who focused on EFT, like tapping, and
right,
just
right.
various things. And we were all coming together. And there were some AA people, some anti-AA people, or non-AA people. And I just came to talk about nutrition. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put out there everything I can and just try to elucidate this the best that I can. And I have a very rapid machine gun fire style of info delivery. So I probably appeal to some people, but not others. But I figured, you know what? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, I am one of the people that like information slowly so I can digest it. But the video is great because I could stop your rapid fire information, pause and go, oh, okay, and let it soak in. So I think that is wonderful. I'm just curious, like, and this may be too general of a question, but hopefully I can focus it as we talk, but that is, I am curious when you share this information, with people, specifically someone who has gone back and forth from drinking to not drinking. They've tried it a number of times. Maybe they've gone to treatment a number of times. And then they see your video. Like, I'm curious about how it lands for people from on a continuum from, oh my God, this just makes so much sense to me, to, oh my God, this is a little weird for me to take in. Can you talk a little bit about how that lands for people?
Sure. I mean, I'm biased because I mostly talk to the people who it resonates with. And the people that think it's weird probably don't reach out. We probably don't hear from them. I don't get a lot of hate mail, so that's good. Every now and then we get a weird email, but not too often. I feel like we used to get more. But most people, at the very least, find hope in the nutritional segment because they
Yeah,
understand that this is something that can possibly help them. And this is a condition that's widespread. I think it intuitively makes sense that
right,
when you're poisoning yourself with something that's depleting your biochemistry day after day or week after week, or maybe even in a cycle pattern, binges keep getting worse and the symptoms keep getting worse, it just makes sense that at least part of the solution would logically involve putting back those things that the alcohol took out or depleted or imbalanced.
right. Yeah, and in that video, I really appreciated, like, one of the things I heard you say is, this may sound crazy, and I know if I was listening to it, where I'm guessing some of you are, I would probably have a hard time believing this myself. And I was going, wow, well, that's pretty honest. And but that's a very real challenge. I mean, sometimes people have to try the same thing over and over again many times before they're willing to take in new information. And yes, it makes so much sense. The body gets depleted from nutrients and, um, the neurotransmitter balance of brain chemicals. But I don't know. I don't really understand why it is so hard, specifically when the first line of defense is, oh, you're addicted to this chemical. Well, we'll give you these other chemicals that are toxic and potentially addictive, i.e., I'm talking about pharmaceuticals. I do know there can be a both and kind of thing, but it's just always been curious for me. So I really like your website. And can you talk a little bit about what you offer on that website?
Absolutely. So, I'll say that fitrecovery.com, it actually started out as fit-recovery.com because I couldn't afford fitrecovery.com when I started it. It was a humble blog. I was just sharing my experiences. And I called it Fit Recovery because I noticed that there was something about this confluence of fitness, which is an open-ended thing. For me, it was heavy deadlifts. I quit when I was 27. I wanted to get strong again. But then I realized I needed yoga to balance out my mind body system. And eventually I got back into martial arts. So now I'm doing a lot of MMA, jiu-jitsu, less lifting, some yoga, and some Pilates, believe it or not. So, but this fitness plus nutrition, this intersection seemed to be ignored, at least back in 2014 when I started blogging. And I figured, well, this is a reason that I should probably blog. And back in, a few years after I started that, we had all sorts of people coming from Google and giving me valuable feedback. Since then, Google has decided it doesn't like my website as much as it used to, and now it's all these government sites and rehab centers, and that's okay. We've moved on to other things. But as far as what's on the website, we have like a few hundred free articles that will never go out of season. This is evergreen content, they would say, right? Like if I wrote an
Right.
article in 2014 about where I was, a year past alcohol. Now it's been 12 years at the moment since I've been addiction free. But I think that's still a relevant article for someone who might be in that zone to read about and see what that experience was. Maybe it resonates with them, maybe it doesn't. We have articles on the nutrients specifically. I even have articles on the medications because I think it's important for people to understand. And of course, I always put a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Although I've been privileged to work with and call friends people who are double board certified in addiction
Right,
medicine, like Dr. Ken Starr. I have good friends with Dr. Rebecca Erickson, who helped me co-formulate my supplement called BioRebalance Restore. And so I get the benefit of absorbing knowledge from these people who have more letters after their name than I do, and who
right.
know more than I do. And I've gotten to learn from them and just try to put out information in the way that I would have wanted to find it back when I was seeking answers. Because in 2012 and 2013, I was Googling a lot. Like, what is this? Why do I wake up with my hands shaking? And I would just find the same boring articles about. I remember one of them, I hope it's now on page 1,000 of Google or gone. It was basically this big, scary image of the alcoholic. And it was like, there's a dark background and it had a top hat. And it was like, the alcoholic is an angry person. The alcoholic will hurt you.
Oh,
So I'm like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. Like, I know what I'm at risk of here, but I want help. So I wanted to put out really instructional, just informational articles for people. And so it kind of
a-
evolved from a blog into offering some specific programs. And we have ways to set up a call with someone on our team from the Fit Recovery website, information about my supplement, BioRebalance Restore, which I probably should have named more simply because that's a mouthful. But yeah, I mean, basically, we have some online programs, we have one-on-one programs, and we have the supplement as well.
so then you have groups that people can go into to learn about this, or they can work one-on-one with their own coach.
Correct. So I actually just recently started a free community on School. School is a platform. It's Skool. It's totally free to join. And I just started it less than a month ago. I think maybe it's been a month. I can't recall. And there's no obligation to do anything in there. But I love School because it kind of takes the best aspects of like the Facebook commenting part without all of the trash that's on Facebook and the ads and the confusion. It's very user friendly. So there are discussion forums. People are very uplifting. They go in, tell their story, maybe ask people for advice. I have a free course in there about how to reduce your biochemical cravings using the
Yeah,
nutrient repair methodology. And I try to make very clear that a nutrient repair regimen ideally is customized to a person, but we're still dealing with the same couple of dozen, or if you want to get really fancy, couple of hundred potentially relevant compounds. And people can start, they can get started by making their own supplement regimen. So the first step is information. And so that's why we have that free school. And I do occasionally well, I should say, I have done an interview with Dr. Rebecca Erickson. I went live
uh-huh.
in School there. We'll be doing some more in there. I'd love to have you in there at some point as well. We're still figuring out the cadence for that. But beyond that, I have a 6 month group coaching program called Fit Recovery 2.0. And that's also hosted on School. It's not free to join, but anyone who joins that gets a 90-minute session with the coach and then 6 months of 3 times a week group coaching. I show up every Wednesday. We've got a couple other awesome coaches hoping to add more and access to every single video course that I've ever made or that anyone on my team has ever made. And so that's probably
Yeah,
a few hundred hours of content. So that's really like the community
yeah.
of fit recovery people.
Nice, nice. So I love what I'm hearing because my focus is, which is a little bit different than the norm. The norm is to focus on that one person with the addiction and kind of myopically. And what I've done is to flip that around and start with the family, giving them numerous things that they can change early on while their loved one is still in addiction without the normal myopic focus on that one person and poke and prod and try to push them to change, which creates more problems. But when they are ready and they are curious, I would love to have a place where I can send them to learn more. And I've been using Julia Ross's amino acid therapy chart and using that as a way to talk about what we call addiction in a spectrum, that we can be addicted to chocolate and alcohol and marijuana fire all four neurotransmitter systems, and we can get addicted to pharmaceuticals, etc. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but so it's like working with the family and the individual, and when they change together, I think that can be that they can heal together as opposed to the old model of heal separately and you, the individual with addiction, go over there, and you, the family, go over there kind of thing. So I love to hear the fact that you have this school program and there, yeah. And if it's anything like the one video that I saw on your website, there's a lot of material, I'm sure.
Thank you. It's similar to that. I'm just a slightly older and probably no more, but yeah. I mean, it's a similar type of thing. I think your approach is brilliant, and if there's something that's been an oversight on my part, it's the family dynamic, and I've tried to, it's easy to get pigeonholed, when you have a
Yeah,
message and you spread it
yeah,
online. So it's like, oh, Chris Scott, he's the supplement guy. I don't believe that supplements cure addiction. Like that's not, and I hear that like, oh, can you give me the supplements that'll cure my addiction? It's like, no, no, this is a nuanced issue. And I would never claim that that's the case. I'm not saying that people don't permanently overcome their addictions. I think they can. I think you can live a very healthy and happy rest of your life, but there are many other dynamics that go into it. And the way that I've tried to reconcile that issue and avoid being pigeonholed as just the supplement guy, because certainly more than supplements went into my recovery, is to adopt the biopsychosocial spiritual model from Dr. Amen, the psychiatrist who
yes.
basically
Awesome.
uses that. And yeah, he's great. He does brain scans and he recommends supplements often in lieu of harsh medications for people, often people with like all sorts of we would say mental disorders or even people that seem hopeless. Maybe they have extreme suicidal tendencies or whatever it may be. Uh, and so he's helped a lot of people like that. And so I thought, all right, so he's looking basically for missing links. Maybe someone's primary missing links are biochemical, but maybe they're really isolated. Or maybe they have a spiritual yearning for more
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
keep covering it up with the alcohol or using the alcohol for escapism or cocaine or marijuana or chocolate or whatever it might be, food. And I
right.
didn't mention Julia Ross in the beginning. She's awesome. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing her on my YouTube channel some years ago. And she's just a legend in this space with her work on amino acid therapy. But I think that's one piece, the amino acid therapy, the nutrient repair. I think it is the biggest common denominator in terms of missing links. Again, because it's somewhat tautological that if you're poisoning yourself and you're creating deficiencies and imbalances, we have these things that people don't talk about that can help you reverse that and you feel better.
Yeah,
But at the same time, the family dynamic is so important, and it was really important to me. And I've tried to be transparent about the fact that one of the reasons I could recover, and one of the reasons I even got to the point where I had white knuckled far enough to find the nutrient repair, was because I had very supportive parents. And they didn't understand what I was going through, but they wanted to understand. I was not shamed. They,
yeah,
when I
nice.
went into the 12-step rehab, they were given the disease model, which, I won't go down that rabbit hole. I think, at least initially, for some people, that's the best way to understand what's going on because then you have compassion for the person. But I can tell you, however many years later, the idea that I'm some broken addict that they need to go in a room and talk about, all the things I did to them, that's not the case at all.
Yeah, that's that is just beautiful. And I just huge credit to your parents there for not falling into the thing that many families do of, you know, shame, blame, poke, and always be well, it comes from worry and concern, and under that is love, but it oftentimes can be anxiety and really create a negative dynamic be, between the family and the person in recovery trying to do their best where they're at.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I'll tell you that actually, so there's a little story from when I was in that center, and I'm not trying to bash this place endlessly. It had very nice people working largely, but I think it was working with a broken or incomplete model. But my personal, what do they call it, case manager or whatever that was, the counselor in charge of my case, talked to
Right.
me and then talked to my parents separately, and then tried to have my parents draw up a document to present me that would, basically pick me apart. And my she said, you need to come up with
Wow.
all the things that Chris has done to you over the years. We need to really make him feel the pain. And they were thinking, like, well, we can't think of much. Like they lived several hours from me. I never made a
Yeah.
fool of myself. I'm not shaming anyone who did. And I'm not saying I was
Yeah.
perfect. I was far from my best self. But one thing I did
Right.
really well was hide my addiction. And I was a
Yeah.
functioning alcohol dependent. I was not a totally dysfunctional one until the week that I threw in the towel. And when I couldn't get to work, I couldn't drive to work. That was when I said, all right, I'm going to start hurting people, at least because they're going to be bummed out by how weirdly bad I seem to be doing at life. So I need to tell everyone, and I'm going to die. I
That
know how bad it is. They didn't.
there is a treatment center that was up in Colorado that's been there 50 plus years. Same kind of model that you're talking about, where, it's like coming up with the laundry list of you did this, you did this, you did this, and then kind of bringing them together in some kind of way that just increases shame, increases the difficulty to rebuild trust and to focus on what can be done, what we can do, as opposed to, just staying focused on the story of the past. And I think, well, as a therapist, I think it's pretty obvious that the more we focus on a negative story, the more we can recreate that. And so I'm curious from your experience, specifically with treatment centers. I am curious what you've experienced with treatment centers warming up to amino acids, supplements, stuff like that. I know many of them have warmed up to the exercise and movement and all of that because there's so much research with that. There's research with the bio-nutritional repair thing too. But I'm just curious, like, what's been your experience of treatment centers' reaction to amino acids, supplements, bio-nutritional repair?
That's a great question. And I have to say, I haven't really tried to proactively reach out to them, mostly lip service or like, yeah, we'll look into it and get back to you. And they would not get back to me. I'm good friends with one of Julia Ross's proteges named Chris Engen. Chris Engen's great. She's certified in nutritional therapy, also diet, and really knowledgeable about diet for recovery and just general health. And I know she used to work for a treatment center and she designed their amino acid therapy. She was seeing great results. And I don't know if it was because of the great results. I don't want to get too cynical, but I think she had also kind of dissed the owner of the rehab also owned an Italian restaurant. Look, I love Italian food, but was bringing in, ziti and, various
Pasta.
things, lots of pasta. And she was telling the patients, like, to minimize your portion of the carbohydrates here because, you're going to end up with hypoglycemia or it's
Uh,
worse in it and whatnot. So I think she fell out of favor with the owner of that rehab and ended up not working for them for very long, despite the good success. And then, of course, to be really cynical, I think the business model, quite apart from how nice or well-meaning the people are who work for it, but the business model of rehab largely runs on recidivism. It's repeat business, it's recurring business, and that's a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. But when you realize that, if the investors in a rehab place are looking at this, they're like, how come we have less recurring revenue? It's like, oh, because we incorporated amino acid therapy. People are getting better. They'll say, well,
right.
we have to fix this, fire the amino acid therapist, or if they were not short-sighted. And this is what my hope is. And I'll get to this in a second because I think there are some now who want to incorporate it. They will say, all right, well, we have to change our business model to rely less on recidivism and more on continuing services to help people make use of these things so that we don't have to rely on them just getting sick again and coming back or relapsing and coming back, we can help them moving forward by mastering or at least hiring people who understand this modality that we've neglected. And I'll say in that vein, even though this is not something that I've tried to do proactively, really, I would never name names, but there have been people uh, in my 6 month coaching program, Fit Recovery 2.0, who unbeknownst to me until they got better using that program and recovered themselves, have said like, look, Chris, one of them said, I own a treatment center. And I want to incorporate this into my like how can and I had a meeting with him and his staff. Another one was a counselor who kept relapsing and she'd been fired. I
Yeah.
had another client who's a former nurse at a rehab center, and all of them said, and I think this comes from a genuine place of they realized what helped them, and
Yeah.
they kind of I think it's a almost poetically cruel turn of events to be the person who owns something or works in something that's helping people, and then you get struck down by the same thing. Right? Like first
Yeah. Yeah.
you're the
Yeah. I
giver of
get it.
care, and now you feel like a hypocrite or a bad person or
Right.
whatever
Yes.
it is. And it's not true, right? Like addiction is a very sneaky thing. And so but then once they get better using this modality, using nutrient repair, among other things, or maybe a different approach, they become really passionate about wanting to
Yeah.
incorporate it.
Yeah. So, did any of those people kind of take you up on your offer to be a consultant for their program or something?
Yeah. And
Nice.
it's in the works, I'll say.
Nice. I mean, I asked because there's probably 9 or 10 treatment centers around the country that I know of. And I mean, like at one point I was an interventionist and I quickly learned that was not for me. And I was part of a team of a internationally known interventionist. And one of the things that I do is to help match, individuals that want recovery with treatment, a treatment program. And, I think about the both and kind of thing, like a normal air quotes here, treatment center, traditional treatment, but then also having like an amino acid therapy recovery coach kind of person, and both together, being a solution, that can be very different than just doing the traditional program by itself. So, do any of your clients, do they come with a both and kind of mindset?
Always. Yeah. And we encourage
Always?
that. I always encourage people to stack modalities that work for them. Now, I think the difference is that, you're helping families to stack these modalities, figure them out. Whereas I'm usually working with individuals. And so I'm
Right.
saying, keep an open mind. Like, don't laugh at the person in our group who did the Sinclair method and also used nutrient repair. Maybe that's what they needed, right? Everyone has different missing links. So I like that biopsychosocial spiritual model with the missing links approach. And then when you're done with dire missing links, there's still always opportunities for optimization. And so I'm still optimizing, right? So I prefer to call it optimization rather than maintenance. Maintenance kind of implies that, like, if I don't take my vitamin C tomorrow, I'm going to relapse. That's not the case. But I think it's
Right.
more of an optimization thing. But in the very beginning, I think it's important for people to keep a very open mind towards pretty much anything. I mean, there are very few things that I would say. I mean, there are things like I'm not a fan, for example, personally, of antabuse. I think it's cruel. I think that there are other medications. Like that's just a punishing medication. It does nothing to rebalance the body. And, I feel bad for anyone who's used mouthwash or cologne the right way and
Yeah.
then had some awful reaction and ended up in the hospital. So, I mean, there are modalities. I think some are better than others, maybe universally, but generally speaking, I'm open to anything. And that's one reason I enjoyed going to that retreat where I learned about brain spotting and tapping and other things I'd never even heard of. And
Yeah.
I've always had a more the merrier approach. And, it's before AI, or at least before I learned about AI. And I kept thinking, like, what if we had a system that would allow people that would like figure out your ancestry, your environment, your childhood, significant
Right.
events, who knows, all sorts of things, your microbiome, all sorts of things, and then give you the right supplement regimen, tell you need brain spotting, tell you need, or at least to try it, right? Like, what are the top 5 things you should try? I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. 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 I I am curious. I'm always kind of looking at things, and myself, I have a healing arc pathway for families. And I part of the healing arc pathway is giving referrals along the way because as a therapist, one of the blessings of being a therapist is you take ongoing continuing education about whatever you're interested in. And and there's so many different pieces, and those pieces aren't the exact same for every person, as you know. But so with where we're at right now, is there anything that I've missed in this conversation that you want to hit on?
I don't think so. I'm always a bit OCD about like tying up my own loose ends. So I wanted to return briefly to when I said that supplements aren't the only thing that people need, because I think then that opens up the question. People often have a very binary question for me. They're like, do the supplements work or do they not? Is this going to
Yeah,
fix me or is it not going to fix me? Or is this going to fix my daughter or is it not
yeah,
going to fix my daughter? And I
right.
think the answer to that has to be that the nutrient repair is a foundational modality. It's a launch pad, if you will, to summoning the energy and the clarity and the optimism and generating the restorative sleep that you need or your daughter needs in order
Yeah,
to draw upon that finite reserve of willpower to
yeah,
then
yeah,
make your life better. There's always agency. We're not magicians, as you know. I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, right? There's always agency, there's choice. I'm a big fan. I kind of swapped out and this was a personal decision. I swapped out what I would call the AA psychology for basically Tony Robbins psychology. I started
yeah,
leaping out of
yeah.
bed in the
Awesome.
morning thinking like, one of his favorite sayings is you feel what you focus on, which you alluded to earlier. You tend to find what you're looking for. So when I stopped identifying with the problem and I started identifying with the solution, it really
Yeah.
made it easier for me to make my life better. But I would say
S-
nutrient repair is like the training wheels that someone needs in order to like get to the point where they can ride the bike on their own. That doesn't mean they're
Right.
never going to crash their bike. It just means that
Yeah.
they can ride their bike. You still have to live your life and be careful, and there's all sorts of
S-
pitfalls.
So one of the things that I think about when I'm listening to you is Dr. Ken Blum and his work, which is actually not new, but it hasn't really been used very much. But one of the things I got from Ken is just the neural networks, the pathway in the brain, for instance, from alcohol or something, that pathway is like a muddy road and deep tracks over and over and over kind of thing. So it's easy to get caught in doing the same thing over and over again. And the nutrient repair actually starts to rebuild those tracks to make it easier to create new tracks, create a new daily protocol, whatever that is. And I know for myself, I mean, I didn't go to treatment centers or anything like that, but I know for myself, I probably, did supplements and amino acid therapy pretty focused for about 18 months before I really saw differences in cravings of things like potato chips. Like, like I'm not going to get a DUI eating potato chips, but, it was quite obvious to me that this is more than drugs and alcohol. So, I'm a big fan of the nutrient repair. I love what you're doing. And, hopefully, we can have support with one another and, build teams around families and individuals that really want to heal because, you know, family dynamics. One of the, or let me say it this way, one of the myths I've seen is that families just think, oh, we need our loved one to get sober and then we can go back to normal. And what I want to say is that is a myth because normal is the environment that surrounded when the addiction was created. And it's not black and white. That's not the only thing. Like you're saying, the nutrient repair isn't the only thing. And I think of Christina Vasilok's three-legged stool, with the leg that's often missing. She's saying the same thing you are, the biochemical leg. So, yeah, I just would love to see my part of my mission is supporting families to actually have expanded addiction education, which includes the conversation that we're having right now, because their brain is working better. They're not addicted. They can absorb new information easier. And when the time is right, trickle it out to the individual that's curious about recovery. So, yeah, this has been a
Very
great,
well said.
well,
Yeah, I
thank
wanted
you.
to say one last thing, if I may. Is, I think it says a lot about you as a therapist or as someone who was an interventionist, as someone who easily could have gotten stuck in the mud tracks, if you will, of just doing one thing in one dimension. And I mean, I've talked to so many, even like well-meaning therapists, but all they know is the CBT, or all they know is AA, or
Yeah.
all they know is this. So I think it's really a testament to your own ingenuity and open-mindedness
Well,
that,
thank
and
you.
also compassion. Clearly, you love what you do to embrace these other modalities that are not easy to go out in public, and not that there's a stigma against them, but it's an uphill battle to try to spread the word about all of these things. So I love what you
Oh
do
my
as well.
gosh. Yeah, it really is an uphill battle. And ideally, when it's a unified group of people, when it's a unified message, it can have more substance, get more traction. That's my hope. My mission is to change how we think about addiction, speak about addiction, take action relative to addiction, and that family members are in the perfect position to start that. So, and that's the exact opposite of the traditional thing. Family members are, you know, shaming label, shaming label, shaming label, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this has been great conversation. Any last thoughts or comments before I ask you again how people can get in touch with you?
I think we've covered a lot, but anyone can get in touch with me at fitrecovery.com. We've got a contact form. They can email Chris@fitrecovery.com. Those are probably the best ways. And it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for spending this time with me on the Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you something to pause with, maybe a new way to understand what is happening in your family, or a small shift you can carry into your next conversation with the person you love. If this episode brought someone to mind, I invite you to share it with them. Sometimes one conversation, one idea, or one different way of seeing things can open the door to change. You can also learn more about my book, Rethinking Addiction, The New Family Recovery Solution. In the book, I share a different way for families to think about addiction, communicate with more clarity, and create family rules that are stronger than addiction's chaos. All the details are in the show notes. You can also visit thefamilyrecoverysolution.com for resources, guidance, and next steps for families impacted by addiction. Thank you again for listening. I look forward to being with you in the next episode.